For the purposes of our show...
Order of magnitude's the word. Sorry.
For the purposes of our show, we're going to go... Say that line again, but clean.
Order of magnitude. Sorry.
You want to... I'm pushing forward. Welcome to Muses of Mythology, a podcast where we explore how ancient myths become part of modern pop culture through the lens of Rick Riordan's The Kane Chronicles. This is story 104. Egypt is just really old, y'all.
Part 1.
Yeah, well, I mean, probably. My notes are 11 pages long.
Yeah.
I'm your co-host and podcasting muse, Darien Smartt. Joining me is my co-host and brother, DJ.
How's everybody doing today? DJ the Muse, and been playing Fantasy Life recently.
And I don't have time to follow up on that. We've got too much to talk about.
Yeah.
We're going to muse around the garden. We'll be right back. DJ, it's Pride!
Wow!
Hey,
look at that! Happy
Super
Pride,
Jazz.
everybody!
Happy
Pride,
Pride.
Darien.
Oh, thank you, DJ. You get nothing.
No, I get nothing. I don't want it.
No, it's not for you.
No.
You don't need it.
I'm
I
fine.
appreciate your self-awareness in that fact.
Perfectly
I love you
fine.
very
Don't-
much.
I'm
DJ
me.
doesn't need...
I'm me. I'm him.
And that's DJ. Okay. It's Pride. And hey, we also kind of forgot to do a donation last month. That's my bad.
Yeah, we
Sorry,
did.
gang. So this month, we'll be doing a bigger donation specifically to the Human Rights Campaign. This organization envisions a world where every member of the LGBTQ plus family has the freedom to live their truth without fear and with equality under the law.
Sounds wonderful.
It's very important. Because not to be a downer, hey, y'all, things aren't great right now. Seeing a lot of the...
These are great for a lot of people right
A lot
now.
of people.
It's really rough.
It's only been... Hey, TJ, it's the 10th anniversary of same-sex marriage being legalized in the United States by a Supreme Court order.
TikTok.
Shut the fuck up, you asshole. It's not that old. It's
no,
only
it's not. It's
10.
ridiculous.
That's a fourth grader.
Yeah, that's rough.
Gay marriage is a fourth grader. And it's still pretty new. And there's a lot of people that would like to see that and a lot of other rights go away. And that can't happen.
That's what the Human Rights Campaign is doing.
That's what the Human Rights Campaign is all about. Making sure that doesn't happen. Making sure everybody has the ability to just be their authentic selves.
Yeah.
And live
It's very
happy
important.
and safely in this country where that's supposed to be our whole thing.
That's yeah.
So.
Well, you know. We
For-
currently have 11 patrons, so we will be doing an additional,
Let's just make it an even 50.
a nice, clean $50.
Mhm.
A good, that's a Franklin Delano Roosevelt on that bad boy? Who's on the 50?
Who's on the 50? It's not Andrew Jackson.
No, that's on the 20.
It's not Benny Boy.
No, that's the 100.
It's not Hamilton.
No, he's the 5.
It's not Washington.
Ulysses S. Grant.
Ulysses S. Grant. You know what? He burned down Atlanta.
Shout out.
Fuck yeah. First Pride was a riot. That's
a clean
important.
50 on that bad boy. Ulysses S. Grant is going into the pockets
Woo!
of the Human Rights Campaign.
If you like to learn more about the Human Rights Campaign, there'll be a link in the show notes. If you have the means to donate to this organization, or if you know of other organizations that are near and dear to your heart in helping the queer community and are in the space to be able to give, we encourage you to do so.
Yes.
There's a lot of important ways to celebrate Pride, being prideful, wearing your colors, celebrating openly, going to parades and parties and things like that. That's all important. But equally important is remembering that Pride is a protest. It is a riot. There's a lot of fun Pride merch to buy. Definitely double check and make sure if you're buying your Pride merch, it's from a company that actually supports queer folks and didn't roll that back in November and then come back and be like, you still like us, right? No, fuck off, Target.
Thank you guys so much for being patrons. We really do appreciate it, and we like doing these donations every time.
We do. I didn't mean to forget. I'm sorry. Okay.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Back to the show.
DJ, Egypt is old.
Yeah, it is.
No, but it's old.
Yes.
It's 5,000 years old.
Yes.
And I can say that. You can be like, yeah, but can you comprehend that?
No, of course
No.
not, Darren. I've been on this earth for 26 years. I can barely comprehend that.
Yeah. We live in a nation that is about to celebrate its
250th.
250th. I was trying to... Is there a word for bi...
249th.
Well, 249th. Next year is 250.
Yeah.
We'll see if we make it.
I don't... no, I don't think... I don't think there's something for a quarter century.
Yeah, okay.
Or
Okay.
quarter millennia.
Gotta focus up. But it's not... Wow, that thinking about just 250 years ago and how old and different things were in our country. And just now let's try to talk about a series of stories that were developed over the course of a civilization that's how many times as ancient as older than ours?
Much.
12?
Almost a whole degree of magnitude.
A degree of magnitude,
No.
DJ says.
Almost 2 times the degree of magnitude.
What is... No, can't get off. That will not ask what that
10
is.
10 times.
10 times. Thank you. Okay, so...
But it's like 20 times.
So for the purposes of our show, we're going to go off of the markers Rick Riordan established in the King Chronicles in defining what counts as ancient Egypt.
Okay.
So, like, specifically what we saw in the Hall of Ages, where it started with the post the Age of the Gods. The first thing we get for, like, human Egypt is the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt.
Okay.
So that's going to be our starting points. And then the end we see is the death of Cleopatra, the 7th, and the end of the Ptolemaic period.
Yeah.
So those are our markers. And that time spanned over 3,120 years. So when we are going to go forward in this season and talk about the myths and stories of ancient Egypt, that is the period of time we're operating within. And much like where we spent an episode talking about the Eddas and trying to like contextualize that because it was a heavy influence over the rest of the Norse season, I think it's valuable to spend some time with this like crash course ancient Egyptian history, where I kind of want to reflect on the length of that time, what was going on in these periods of time through ancient Egypt, and also try to, in hopes to help us better conceptualize how long ago these events were, tying them into other world events and being like, well, this was happening here. Here are some things going on in the rest of the world.
Yeah.
To try to anchor that a little bit more.
Yeah, more notable things that we all know and love.
Yeah, but also because it can make it feel when you just study like one thing of history, this happened and this happened and this happened and this happened, it kind of just feels condensed. And it feels like, yeah, well, this was pretty short after this because, that's when I learned it.
Pretty short after, and it's like 300 years after.
3,300,
Yeah.
5,500, several thousand. So hopefully by being like, and this, when we were talking about the pre-dynasty, here's something that happened. And then now we're over here in like the third intermediate period, and this thing happened. And it's like, wait, hold on. That thing in the intermediate period also happened forever ago.
Yeah.
Just trying to be like, we're not getting much closer to, like, we are, but it's still ancient.
Yes.
So before we start at the unification, like our starting point, I do want to acknowledge that there are people living in the Nile Valley region since the Paleolithic period, since the Stone Age.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And there are cultures that can be identified as like having identity, having been established since the Neolithic age, which was about 12,000 years ago. And these cultures were influenced by the Middle East and Mesopotamia. And that I want to include these because even though we're going to start with what ancient Egypt is, like these early cultures and this presence influences how it begins.
Yeah.
Right? And
Of course
so,
they do. Why wouldn't they?
Yeah. So in the later Neolithic era was where we start to see like writing and bureaucratic administrations being introduced by the various kings of these regions, right? In Upper and Lower Egypt. And this is another important thing to remember. When we say upper and lower, that's not north and south. That is the direction the Nile flows. The Nile flows from
It flows
deeper into
north.
Africa, into the Mediterranean, which is north. But we go downstream. So Upper Egypt is the southern part of Egypt, and Lower Egypt is the northern part because it is, again, following the flow of the Nile. The Nile flows into the Mediterranean. That is the Nile Delta.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So Egypt wasn't a unified civilization yet. This is like
It's pre-Qin dynasty, actually.
Yeah, for sure. But there are elements that we would recognize here as like, oh, that's an ancient Egyptian thing.
Yeah.
For example, according to Encyclopedia Britannica, in the later pre-dynastic period, objects bearing written symbols of royalty were deposited throughout the country, and primitive writing also appeared in marks of pottery. Because the basic symbol for the king, a falcon on a decorative palace facade, hardly varies, these objects are thought to have belonged to a single line of kings or a single state, not to a set of small states. This symbol became the royal Horus name, the first element in a king's titulary, which presented in the reigning king as a manifestation of the god Horus, the leading god of the country. So, before we get to like, this is Egypt, we have the concept of the god Horus, and that representing the pharaoh as a god king.
Yep.
One more thing to set like our groundwork.
Yeah.
Some of the terms we're going to be using to establish these periods of the how we chronicle Egyptian history. We talk a lot about dynasties, and we talk about the kingdoms.
Yeah.
Right? DJ, you're familiar with these concepts.
Yes.
Would you like to define the concepts? I'm going to talk a lot.
A dynasty is like the length of time a specific family rules.
Mm-hmm.
A kingdom is just like a state of that family.
Yeah, I guess I didn't clear. Kingdom in the concept of, could you name the kingdoms of Egypt?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No, we didn't go that in depth with Egyptian history. No,
you definitely did. This is, sorry. I don't mean the actual specific names of the kingdoms, locations, and dynasties. I mean, the kingdoms is the term we use for chronicalizing Egyptian history.
I don't remember that at
That's
all.
Fair. It's fine.
Yeah.
You're not an Egyptologist.
I had a whole section on China, and I can name some dynasties from that, but...
You had a different hyperfixation. You were way more into China, were you?
No, I wasn't.
Interesting. I can't name.
Because I just had a whole
we gotta
trimester on China.
Love this. We got to move on. This is me. Okay. Exactly. The dynasties are the families, lineages that ruled for XYZ chunks of time. Some are shorter, some are longer. There are 30 recognized dynasties through the history of Egypt. They were established by a 3rd century BC. All these centuries are BC. Everything is BC. So if I don't say it was BC. Everything was... Christ was born 30 years after Cleopatra the 7th died.
Yeah.
BC. So the system of 30 dynasties was established by a 3rd century Greek-speaking Egyptian priest named Manetheo.
Okay.
And by 3rd century, that is 300 BC.
Yep.
But this guy looked at everything and was like, you know what? I think this is how we should be trying to chronicleize Egypt. And everyone was like, sounds good. The kingdoms are the Old Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom, and the New Kingdom.
Okay.
And these are 3 distinct periods of time in which Egypt was unified upper and lower. Like, as I was going through, I was trying to figure out, why do we call some things kingdoms and in between times the intermediate periods? And it eventually becomes clear, it's because after Egypt got unified, that didn't stay that way for 3,000 years.
Some people didn't like that, and they changed it later.
Things just fell out of power, and power got dispersed, and some people gained more power than the pharaoh, who was not called the pharaoh for like a big chunk of time. They were kings, and the term pharaoh came about in the New Kingdom. And so that terminology was established in the 19th century. This is the only time it's going to be after. Okay, I guess I lied. There will be another time. There'll be 3 times total where the timelines will be AD. So this is one of those times.
Okay.
In the 19th century AD, German Egyptologist Christian Charles Johannes von Bussen, he said, this is how we should define these times. So he used the German word Reich, which means empire, and did not have the intermediate periods. It was following scholars who would expand on this idea of like breaking Egypt up into these distinct chunks. So we have the kingdoms where Egypt was unified, and these are continually like, things are going great. A lot of like economic prosperity and power of the pharaohs and a bunch of like projects building pyramids and temples and crazy stuff. And then the intermediate periods are kind of what you could define as almost a dark age. There's less centralized power, and there are far fewer noteworthy events of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And this is either because, again, these things lasted for hundreds of years. So it's not to say nothing of importance happened. People lived, people died.
Probably things that
happened.
important happened, but just lost to history.
Also, we probably lost a lot of stuff to history, but it was like not unified. Records either just weren't as well kept, perhaps because things were not so centralized. There weren't very many major projects. A lot of, when you read into it, it's a lot of like, here are the kings we know about. That's all that happened. So these are the terms we use when trying to like break down this long period of history, neither of which were really terms that were being used in the moment. Say for dynasties, like right at the end.
Yeah.
Like in the last 270 years, we got introduced to dynasties as a way of breaking this up. But the kingdoms came way later. So this is totally modern terminology. These were not cycles that the Egyptians living in this period would have recognized for themselves. Like we would recognize how you could divide times into presidential administrations.
Yeah.
Like we recognize that as a way to define like cultural periods and things like that. But that's not, the Egyptians didn't view these things in that way because this way of defining time didn't exist.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we begin. It has begun. The unification period, which spanned from 3,150 to 2,686 BCE. So
good 500
just over
years.
Yep, just over 460 years. And this was the first dynasty of Egypt is established, unified under the king Menes, who was the first human king, because in the lore, gods were the kings beforehand. He is said to have unified Egypt and started the first dynasty. He's also credited with founding the capital of Memphis and establishing some great irrigation works, which you love to see in a desert.
Oh, yeah.
According to Mentheo, who was that priest I mentioned earlier from the 3rd century, he reigned for 62 years and was killed by a hippo.
Hate to see it.
Now,
Hippos are a problem.
Hippos are a problem. Let's not forget that. They're a real problem.
Yeah, don't fuck with a hippo.
Now here's the first thing. Mentheo lived almost 2,900 years after the unification of Egypt.
Yep.
So he's far from a primary source, and this King Menes is not actually mentioned in any first dynasty documents.
Uh-oh.
He was mentioned much later as like, hey, like this was part of like the lore of Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
But in the same way King Arthur is maybe part of the lore of England.
Yeah.
Like, maybe inspired by a real dude. But this Menes guy probably wasn't him. Modern scholars believe the King Namar, who they actually have like records of, was the one who actually unified Egypt through conquest. Yeah, I know, right? That said, I was like, I couldn't remember which name Rick Riordan used because Carter sees the pharaoh who unified Egypt. And it is Namar.
Yeah.
Narmir. I'm sorry, y'all. This is the unification of Egypt. This is the first time Upper and Lower Egypt, we've got one kingdom all together under these dynasties. Here's our world history fun fact. Egypt was unified around half a century before the construction of Stonehenge began in England.
Wow.
Literally.
Still don't know what that was all about.
We can't. This is not what this episode is about. There's too much of that.
One of the other great wonders.
Yes. All right. So that brings us into the Old Kingdom, which spanned from 2,649 to 2,130, around 519 years. And this is the age of the pyramid builders.
Nice.
All of that, not all of the architecture, but the big architecture, like you think
stuff.
about Giza. That, like, pyramids, that was the Old Kingdom. With, like, a little sprinkling later in the Middle Kingdom. Some pharaohs later on would be like, hey, you know what? Actually, love
sick.
that. Want that for me. I am a god, and thus I deserve this.
Yeah.
But by and large, it was mostly these Old Kingdom pharaohs. So, like, literally, like, 2,500 years ago is when most of these pyramids popped up. And that's a pretty, like, a 500-year span. But, like, then the rest of Egypt, they just weren't building pyramids.
It's like, that shit was a lot of work. We can't be doing that again,
a lot of labor, like, a lot of time.
Look at how big that motherfucker is. That is
great, but,
stunning.
like, it's
stunning. The horizon looks wonderful with these 3 pyramids.
Mm-hmm.
But, man, I am so tired.
I'm so tired. DJ, do you want to take a guess how many, as of this recording today, do you want to guess how many pyramids have been identified in Egypt?
4. D. I don't know, like 60. I don't know.
138.
Wonderful.
And they're probably more than that. We keep finding pyramids. We just straight up find pyramids.
Well, yeah, because the sand.
Because the sand.
The sand is constantly moving. This is actually a constantly changing topography.
Cannot undersell the sand.
The sand is so big.
So, 138 pyramids minimum. A lot of these just established in the Old Kingdom. Egyptologists believe there's a great deal of symbolism to the pyramids. What
gets classified as like a pyramid in terms of that 138? Because obviously it's not just like, oh, here's my little quartz pyramid, right? It's not that.
Well, I mean, the pyramid is the shape. So anything that is that shape gets to be a pyramid. I guess.
But what's under that classification of those 136?
Oh, the monuments.
Okay, big monuments. Big
monuments.
Pyramids you can walk inside?
Yeah.
Oh, there's 136 of those?
138, yeah.
That's crazy.
All right, there's a lot.
That's a lot.
Shout out to one of our patrons, B. They went to a pyramid. Pretty recently, them and their husband. And then they shared pictures of them going through, and I just, like, it killed any desire I'd ever had to go into a pyramid. Like, I understand these are tombs, and so they weren't, like, places. People weren't walking around. Absolutely. It was just so narrow. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm not claustrophobic, but I am claustrophobic.
This is not a place for grieving. This is a place for rest, Darien.
It is not a place for grieving. It is a place for rest. Is a damn good way to find a pyramid. Holy shit. I've never seen a pyramid in a temple. Anyway, yeah, just the idea of being stuck is what triggers the claustrophobia. I can walk through a narrow passage, and as long as I can keep moving, I'm all good. But as soon as I get a little stuck...
Dude, the caving stories freak me out.
No, we gotta move.
The diagrams.
This is not a place for grieving. It's a place for rest, but we can't rest here. We have to keep moving. So exactly what the pyramids, like the full extent of what the pyramids represented, or like what inspired the early kings to build the pyramids, will probably never be known, because it's not like something that they recorded, right? Yeah. Like, we don't have... Why do you build laundry rooms this way? Like, this is how you build a laundry room, right? And we just do it in the U.S. and it just makes sense this way.
This is such a big-ass pyramid, though.
They are big. Well, remember, these were... the symbolism, who knows? But we do know that they were almost certainly burial monuments. Like, these were tombs. I'm just going to say this right now. I don't want to fucking hear it. And y'all know what I mean. I'm not interested in
aliens.
Any pseudo-archaeology. Also, no, I'm not interested in any pseudo-archaeology stuff. Like, we know what the pyramids were for. We've studied them extensively. Well, we don't have, like, someone written down, like, this is why we did it. Like, we have enough context clues.
There was probably so many sarcophagi in that big one.
Well, no.
No?
Oh, DJ, it's mostly
stone.
Right.
That's right.
It's got tiny little... There was just one. It was for Khufu.
That's right. It's for the one guy.
It's for the one guy. And that is kind of thing. It's like, why is it so big? It's like, because they're kings and they're megalomaniacs. Yeah. They're also, they're gods.
They're viewed as gods.
They're viewed as gods. So, like,
I can.
It's like, when we have pretty grand burial temples in the modern era for folks who we've deemed important.
Yeah.
So imagine what it would be if we had, like, a living god.
Yeah. God living in a mortal body.
Yeah.
We'd want to preserve that mortal body as best as we can.
Exactly. And also celebrate their importance. And of course, the pharaohs were the ones who were, like, commissioning for themselves. And so they've got a bit of an ego. They want it. So we don't know what it was that inspired the pyramid, but they were for burials. Like, almost all the pyramids we have found, that's all the ones on Giza, they're on the west side of the Nile, where the sun sets, where it was associated with the land of the dead.
Yep.
We also know...
And the reason there are some on the east is because they ran out of real estate.
Maybe. or it got harder to build because parts of the Nile weren't as floody as they needed to like move their stuff. Like, how did they build them? Time, labor, and an extinct branch of the Nile that helped them move the materials and manpower to these structures. Like, that's how they built it. It's a lot of
and
time.
Leverage.
It's
a lot of leverage.
A lot of leverage. But they were good at it.
Yeah.
We were really good at it. And I just don't want to hear it. And you all know. And I don't think any of our listeners are going to.
No.
But I just, for the record, not even as a joke, I can't. But yeah, like we said, like, yeah, they were big and they're grandiose. But also, it's like, it's a public works. It's like people got, despite certain beliefs, it was not, there's no archaeological evidence to suggest that it was an enslaved force that built the pyramids. These are like a public works, which means people got paid. It was like doing road work. This was just like a massive, like, it was a boon to the economy to build massive monuments.
Sorry, honey, I'm going to be late. I just got called for pyramid duty.
Oh, again?
Yeah, it's the like 6th time this week. It's super rough, but.
Okay, well, let the cat out.
The cat's already out. He owns the house. What are you talking about?
The cat gets in and out.
The cat owns the house. What are you talking
legally, it's in the cat's name. That's things about pyramids. Some Egyptologists kind of believe that it's probably the shape of the pyramid may be in like initial reference to a primordial mound that's part of the Egyptian creation myth. Also, perhaps mimicked the rays of the sun because we know Ra is super important.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because like pyramids, you imagine a pyramid today, DJ, and what does that look like?
4 sides.
Okay.
Big.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, it's just a pyramid, right?
Yeah, just stone. Limestone specifically.
Yeah. We're talking about those ones.
Yeah. Not limestone, just stone. The pyramids, when they were like being built, were covered in a shiny, polished limestone.
Oh, yeah,
it would have made them dazzlingly visible across the desert.
I bet they were awesome.
They were bright. Have you ever seen just a skyscraper with so many windows and you see the sun hit that? Like, that's what the pyramids would have looked
awesome.
like.
That's so dope.
And it's gone because over time that was valuable and it got stripped. Perhaps for like when times were tough. It's like, well, we're going to take all the limestone off of that, sell it to fund our military campaign to try to like overthrow
some
Rome. We'll get to that much later. much later. So that's the thing about the pyramids, is that we actually do know quite a bit about them. And while there are some things we are still learning and or discovering about the pyramids and theorizing, they aren't as mysterious as some
might say
History Channel programs might suggest to you. I made a point not to use history.com when I was researching any of this.
Oh, yeah.
Fuck off. No. You don't get to tell me the symbolism of a pyramid. Fuck you. I don't trust you.
Yeah.
So,
big fan. That's so funny.
So, what is recognized as the oldest or first Egyptian pyramid is the Step Pyramid of Dosir. This was built, he was the first king of the 3rd dynasty, reigning sometime between 2006-9-1 and 2006-5. And this is a pyramid in Memphis's necropolis, Saqqara. And this is a step pyramid. So not those smooth side pyramids are imagining. They hadn't got that technology yet.
No, they hadn't figured out. It looks way cooler if you smooth it out.
Yeah, but it's also like hard to do.
Yeah, of course it is.
So this pyramid was 62.5 meters high, or 205 feet.
That's almost as tall as the Titan in Six Flags.
I can't use silence truncate because I need to preserve that pause. Damn, okay. Well, now you're gonna have to definitely take a video of filming that and then look at me and say that for the
that's
content.
That's as big as the first pyramid of Egypt. So that's a little bigger than the first pyramid of Egypt.
We're gonna do that. Great content. Okay, moving on. So another fun fact: not only is it almost as tall as the Titan in Six Flags Over Texas, it was believed, often credited as being designed by Dosir's vizier Imhotep, who was one of the very few non-pharaohs elevated to godhood because he was said to be this great architect and also have invented stone architecture. But there's a lot of evidence to the contrary.
Oh, no. This another stolen valor.
Maybe. It's not that this dude wasn't around, but like his importance was perhaps elevated in later times. So other step pyramids were attempted during the Third Dynasty, but it was the first king of the Fourth Dynasty, Sneferu, whose projects transitioned from step pyramids to true pyramids.
Nice.
And this dude used more stones than any other king in Egyptian history to build his goddamn pyramids. He built this pyramid of Medium, which was probably initially a step pyramid and then modified to become a true pyramid.
Because it looks a little funky.
Yeah, probably. And then he's
just looking at us like, what if we like add a little more?
Just more. Just more on it.
Smooth, like, you know, like get that nice angle from corner to corner on the steps.
So then he built 2 more pyramids, 3 pyramids. There was the bent pyramid at Dashir and the red pyramid at North Dashir.
Nice.
Now his successor was Khufu, who built he built him. He built him?
He built him.
Him. I always thought it was a her, honestly.
Oh, he's a big guy.
The Great Pyramid of Giza, the big one.
Yeah.
Truly, it is the oldest and last surviving of the 7 wonders of the ancient world.
Wow. What were the other ones that's not surviving?
Oh, there was the Colossus of Rhodes, this giant statue. There was the Hanging Gardens of Babylon.
Yeah.
DJ, we can't do this right now. I gotta keep moving forward. No, okay, hold on. Let's just 7 wonders.
Well, I'm wondering.
Of the ancient. I used to know this off the top of my head because I was that kind of weird kid.
Yeah.
Okay, 7 wonders of the ancient world. Here we go. Okay, the Lighthouse of Alexandria, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the Colossus of Rhodes, the Temple of Artemis, the statue of Zeus at Olympia, and the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus. We say the wonders of the ancient world. These are really the wonders of the Mediterranean area.
Well, the Mediterranean area had a lot going for
They
it
did
at
have
the
a lot
time.
going for it, but like China was also doing shit.
Yeah, I mean, we should definitely count. Well, no, because
I know we thought of the Great Wall.
China wasn't really doing much before and during BC, wasn't they?
The Shang Dynasty.
Was that all BC? I don't even
Yeah.
remember. I don't know the time.
I'll mention it.
But when was the Great Wall built?
AD.
Yeah.
I did look that up.
So it doesn't count.
Well, I mean, I'm sure they had other cool shit. I think these things were also just big.
Yeah, I think it's the impressive feats of architecture and stonework.
I mean, that is true. That is true.
That are found here.
These are. I do love the ancient wonders. Just looking at them, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon is the one that I'm most like. Damn, that would be lovely. I bet that was cool as hell. Okay.
I bet they were all.
I mean, but they were all
stellar.
cool, but like the Hanging Gardens.
Yeah, that sounds great.
I love that. Okay, so now Khufu's successor, or his son and his second successor, Khafre, he commissioned another of the pyramids of Giza, as well as the Great Sphinx. 2 for the price of 1.
Nice.
Now, some scholars have suggested that his brother and Khufu's first successor, Defre, actually commissioned the Great Sphinx as a monument to his own father, or maybe it was actually commissioned by Khufu himself. We don't know. It was literally 4,500 years ago.
Yeah.
We don't know. We think it was probably the second son, but like,
who's to say?
It was one of these.
No idea.
It was done during this dynasty, though. And then the last pyramid of Giza was later commissioned by another of the Fourth Dynasty king. So one of these descendants, his name was Menkarui.
They used up all the good stone. They couldn't build any more.
All the good stone.
They couldn't build anymore. Once we finally got reunified again, got this construction project going, they were looking around and were like, damn.
Yeah.
What the fuck, dude?
Pyramids take a lot of time to build, and they take a lot of effort to build.
Oh, yeah.
So, of course, not everyone was built or buried in a pyramid.
No, why would they?
There are a lot of important people who were buried in tombs. For example, during the 5th dynasty of the Old Kingdom, a tomb was commissioned for an individual named Perneb. We know next to nothing about this person, except that based on the size and placement of the tomb itself, we can assume that they were pretty important, either a court official or even a member of the royal family, who, based on the descriptions of it, had some role in the robing and crowning of the king. Now, this tomb was uncovered after being lost in 1907 AD. There's another one.
Yeah.
Now, it was purchased from the Egyptian government in 1913 and then given to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City by Edward S. Harkness. And it's still there, and I'm pretty sure this is the tomb that the Canes used to open the portal at Cairo in the Red Pyramid.
Nice.
Which is why I've taken the time to mention it.
Hell yeah.
I don't know enough about the circumstances surrounding the purchase of this tomb from the Egyptian government.
What was that, the 20s you said?
1913.
1913.
Mm-hmm.
World War I, Ottoman Empire.
You're right. It was the article I read said Egyptian government, but it was, when did the Ottoman Empire fall? It was
after World War I.
After World War I.
That's what caused it to fall.
Yeah, it was the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah. They were just kind of throwing shit away towards the end of that. Yeah. The Ottoman Empire was as far as I'm aware, was a pretty complicated system of states and city-states.
So, it wouldn't be like today if you went up and was like, I'd like to buy this thing, and Egypt would be like, yeah, we totally have it. So it's like, no, okay, thank you, DJ. With that fact, I get it was bought fair and square. I kind of feel like maybe Egypt maybe should get this back. It's kind of crazy.
Negotiate something, maybe, but custody on the summers.
Okay, so
opened up to a sweet heist story, with the transferring back and forth between.
I do love
Egypt
that.
and
You should just be allowed to steal back stuff from your culture. Yeah, I love that. Okay. During the Old Kingdom, formerly independent ancient Egyptian states became known as nomes, and they were all under the rule of the king. It was during this era that the Egyptians believed that the king was the incarnation of Horus, linking the human and spiritual worlds. This is something that carried over from those pre-dynastic ages. And it wasn't until the 5th dynasty that Ra would grow in cultural importance. Before that, Horus was the main guy.
Makes sense.
So here's...
Once Ra got tied to the sun, that was kind of
That's kind of the big thing. Yeah, sun is super important. We live in a desert.
Yeah.
So here's our world history.
Important and powerful.
Important and powerful. So here's our history anchor. At the beginning of the Old Kingdom, the Minoan period began in Crete.
Yeah, that's the one thing that we just have not a lot of. But we know it existed.
Yeah. Exactly. Now, maize began to be cultivated in Central America.
Shout out.
According to Korean
Big fan of corn.
Big fan.
Love corn.
Can't be mad about corn. According to Korean folklore, the hero Dangun established the first kingdom of Korea during this time, and rice was just being introduced in Malaysia.
Nice.
Just things. Now we have the first intermediate period that spanned from 2118 to 2055 BCE. That's 126 years. Now, the intermediate periods were first coined in 1926 by Egyptologist George Steindorf and Henry Frankfurt. This is kind of the Egyptian Dark Ages. Their famines are pretty common. Political unrest is pretty common. Like I mentioned earlier, it was like the break in power between Upper and Lower Egypt. They split apart, often because of chaos in the previous dynasties, usually succession issues, or oftentimes like priests would start to gain more power. And depending on where they were at, they would just be like, we don't have to listen to you anymore. You're in Memphis and I'm not.
Yeah.
Another thing is that in this first intermediate period, we saw that the nomes kind of gained their own power and then just started operating independent of the king. But there's very little textual or archaeological evidence that survives from the era. Like I mentioned earlier, that's also kind of a contributing thing in like classifying this, is just we don't have a lot of what went down here.
Yeah, people just kind of stopped caring about things for a while, and then we started caring again once we unified once more.
Kind of, or like it was like there wasn't a lot of effort put into recording whatever was happening, either because there wasn't things to record or because there wasn't a centralized power. No one was saying you had to.
Once you get divided, well, you don't care about destroying their history.
Yeah. So I don't have a lot to give you. This is just the Egypt broke up. So we get straight into our world history fun facts. During the first intermediate period, the earliest known work of literary fiction was written, the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Oh, nice.
And according to the Hebrew calendar, this is when the biblical flood occurred.
Oh, nice.
Now we enter the Middle Kingdom, which spanned from circa 2040 to 1782 BCE, about just over 250 years. This was our period of reunification.
Another one.
It began with Menutep II of the 11th dynasty, who reunified Upper and Lower Egypt by taking advantage of a revolt to topple the last rulers of the 10th dynasty.
There we go. That's what I'm talking about.
Central power had Memphis used to be the capital. Now power's over in Thebes. And to cement his authority, Menutep restored the cult of the ruler, really cementing, I am a god.
Yeah.
And that really helps get people on board with I have a right to do this. You should all listen to me. I'm literally a god.
Yeah. It's he says.
Yeah.
I can't prove him wrong.
Exactly. The Middle Kingdom saw a lot of war campaigns to consolidate power. It's interesting because sometimes it's there was too many war and unrest, and that leads to things not being good. But much like we know what brought the United States out of the Great Depression was World War II.
Hey, look, war is sometimes really good for the economy.
It really depends on where the war is being fought.
Yeah.
You would definitely say World War II, not great for Europe's economies.
No.
So
wonderful for ours, brother. We became so good.
That was the 1950s. All right, so we saw campaigns to consolidate power, as well as a bunch of economic prosperity. You get more resources as you're conquering more lands. There's some notable pyramid building, though instead of using the stone bricks of the Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom kings used mud bricks and finished with a casing of Tura limestone. Fancy. The oldest known medical text in Egyptian history was written during the Middle Kingdom. This is the Kanun Gynecological Papyrus. Okay. It is literally your Egyptian OBGYN information. I'd love to see that. No.
Did you just unscroll it and it's it's just that diagram of ovaries and it just says it's magic with lines pointing to it?
No, because the Egyptians knew what their shit was about. They were performing.
They were constantly dissecting people with their mummification. So they understood what was going on in the body. Oh, whoa, this must be.
It wasn't the Greeks. It would be the hymen moves. It's hysteria. I don't know what to tell you.
Cheers.
So, during the Middle Kingdom, this is when Osiris would become the most important deity. It was also where we saw the first historically confirmed woman ruler of Egypt, Sobekneferu. Her reign only lasted 4 years.
Oh, well, rough.
And she had no heirs. So her death
didn't
marked
have time.
the end of the 12th. Yeah, right.
Nobody gave her the time to give her an heir.
Her death marked the end of the 12th dynasty, and which started to lead into the decline of the Middle Kingdom. Some world history facts. Let's go back over to Crete, where the palace of Knossos has begun to be occupied. So this palace that we would recognize from Greek mythology as the Palace of Minos. That's when people were actually living there. Also, and this one was fucking crazy in the whole, hey, this is how old Egypt is, gang. The last woolly mammoth went extinct on Wrangel Island in Russia during the Middle Kingdom of Egypt.
Sad.
That's how old Egypt was. Mammoths still walked the earth when it started.
You're telling me a pharaoh could have ridden a mammoth?
A pharaoh? It would not be completely impossible to depict a pharaoh riding a mammoth.
Yeah.
You would have to jump through some hoops to make it happen.
Do it. You could
but
do it.
you could do it.
You could absolutely do some traveling trader. But it's actually, you know what? It's ancient history, P.T. Barnum's The Circus, but with extinct animals during that time.
Man, and it would be as bad as P.T. Barnum because, hey guys, I don't think a mammoth should be in Egypt.
No.
I don't think a mammoth should be in the Nile Valley.
Or it's the hairless mammoth.
Oh, no.
But it's just an elephant.
That's actually funny. The hair is just an elephant. That's great. I love that.
Like, come see this mammoth. Dude, I have like 6 of these in my front yard. Where do you think you are? I know that's an elephant, jackass.
I know that's an elephant.
You're a con man.
Okay. Which brings us, as the decline of the Middle Kingdom brought us to the Second Intermediate Period, which went from circa 1700 to 1550, around 150 years.
Mm-hmm.
Dynastic chaos and warring powers resulted in Upper and Lower Egypt splitting again.
Wow, who'd have thought?
We went from the 13th to the 17th dynasties during this period of time.
Again.
The only noteworthy things were just listing who was king. And also, the development of leavened bread occurred during this period in Egypt.
Nice.
So, shout out to yeasty bread.
Wonderful.
We love rising bread. Big fan, more bread, always good. All right. In the rest of the world, the Shang dynasty began in China. Athens was built. The Code of Hammurabi became the law of Babylon. And Stonehenge was completed.
Wow, it took that long?
It took that long.
What the fuck is Stonehenge?
Listen, it's just a bunch of big stones that they carried from one spot to another.
But it took that long?
I think we know less about Stonehenge than we do about the pyramids, DJ.
Yeah, that's what I'm like. I feel like if it took that long, it should be bigger. There should be more to it, right? They
didn't have the Nile. I don't know what to tell you, man. I'm sure they didn't. I don't think they set out to be like, we're going to build this. I think they're like, it was maybe not completed, but like activity ceased. Because maybe, we don't know.
Yeah, maybe some shit was happening in England at that time.
And they were like, well, we should add another one. And they just kept adding them. And then they're like, no more adding them. We're done adding them.
Maybe.
I don't know. It's not like it's not like we found like a plan that says, oh, yeah, here's the specs for Stonehenge.
If only, dude. Come on.
But,
show me the blueprint.
So, yeah, we are Egypt. Listen, a big chunk of ancient Egyptian history spanned the time it took to build Stonehenge. And it took a long time to build Stonehenge.
A shockingly long time to build Stonehenge.
Okay, so Stonehenge is done, and then the New Kingdom begins. These two events are unrelated, but...
Yeah. But I mean, maybe, who knows, in some cosmologically aligned way.
Who knows?
Oh, it completed and then suddenly...
Enough. Shut it down. Shut it down. Shut it down.
Unified once more.
Shut it down. All right, so circa 1539 to circa 1077, 460-ish years. We start with King Ahmose, who established the 18th dynasty, once again reunifying Upper and Lower Egypt. Do you see the pattern?
So we're working together again, guys.
For a big chunk of time in the Second Intermediate Period.
There's a chance, that they forgot they ever worked together, though. That's the thing. Right?
Probably.
500 years with, like...
Well, I don't know. Records still exist. Stone hieroglyphs still exist.
Sure.
Oral still exists.
Sure, but,
I can't
even
say.
through oral through the ages of now, right? Even through records of the ages now, 500 years ago?
I don't know, DJ. I can't comprehend it. What I can tell you is that during this chunk of time, Lower Egypt was controlled by the Hyksos dynasties, which was like a foreign power that had invaded during the time and taken over. So Ahmose kicked them out, reunited Upper and Lower Egypt, and also expanded Egyptian control into the Middle East, like establishing an Egyptian empire for the first time.
Nice.
Now, his son and successor, Amenhotep I, he abandoned the primordial form of royal tombs in exchange for a rock-cut tomb. All subsequent kings of the New Kingdom, with one notable exception, were buried in concealed tombs in Western Thebes, what is known as the Valley of the Kings.
Nice.
Now, this was the 18th century dynasty, and among the 18th century dynasty rulers was one of the most well-known pharaohs of ancient... Oh, this is also the time when pharaoh started to be used. As, like, instead of king, they were calling themselves pharaoh.
Mm-hmm.
Or, instead of king, whatever the word they used. This is where the term pharaoh came into practice. One of the most well-known rulers of Egypt, as well as one of the most well-known women rulers of the ancient world. My girl, Hatshepsut. But...
Say it's a Gesundheit.
Fuck you. You know what? Just for that, we're done. The episode ends here.
Hate to see
we'll be back. It's too long to be all one episode, so we're getting two slightly less than long episodes. We got at least
another, hour and a half on this?
Yes, because I got a shit ton on Hatshepsut, and we haven't even gotten to Cleopatra.
Yeah.
Or that guy that decided, you know what? Fuck all the other gods, just the sun god. Yeah. That was not a popular move.
Of course it's not.
So, we've got again, we're only in the 18th dynasty. It's only 1500 BCE.
Yeah.
There's still 1,470 years left in ancient Egypt as we will be contextualizing it.
Nice.
So
very excited.
Rather than Darien edit a 2-hour-long episode, we've got a slightly shorter episode.
It'll be fine,
but it'll be great. We'll be back in your ears on Tuesday, June 17th to continue talking about how old Egypt is. And also, I think splitting this episode into 2 parts just also really helps hammer home this reality.
It's now you guys have to wait much as the Egypt
had to we'll
wait
be back
to
in 3,000 years.
Yeah, exactly. We are I forgot the word I was going to use. Anyway, continue.
All right. Thank you very much, and until next time, don't be like Zeus.
Don't be like Zeus.
Muses of Mythology is created and hosted by Darien and DJ Smartt. It's edited by Darien Smartt. The show is produced by Darien and DJ Smartt, as well as
Tim O'Connor. The Crystal Con Man. Our music is Athens Festival by Martin Hain.
And our cover is by Ran Kapoka. You can find them on Instagram or through the link in our show notes. Want more Muses of Mythology? Support the show on Patreon. Join the Patreon for free for access to outtakes and bloopers from our main feed episodes. Or for $5 a month, you can enjoy our Bunker 9 bonus episodes every other week. Get more at patreon.com/Muses of Mythology.
You can also support the show by leaving a review at lovethepodcast.com/Muses of Mythology. Or tell a friend why you love the show.
Don't forget to check out all of our episodes and episode transcripts at musesofmythology.com.
Thanks for listening.